James. Yeah, I started RiskAssess about 14, maybe 15 years ago now with Philip, who is actually my father. And I look after the software side of things, and Philip wrote all the safety databases. So I know RiskAssess very well, in fact, because I wrote pretty much all of the code of it. And on safety things, I know a bit about it, but Philip is the real expert there. So if there's any really tricky chemical questions, I'll get back to you on those, but I think I should be able to answer most things that you want to know. So yeah, feel free to ask questions as we go through, and Mel will let me know, and I can pause and we can talk about it. So just before we get into things more, now this is slightly tricky over the video conference, but if you can pop your hand up if you're a lab manager, and Mel, if you can let me know roughly how
pretty
many.
Much we're all lab managers, really.
Oh, okay.
We're all lab techs, so yeah.
I mean, what proportion lab managers and what proportion lab techs would you say?
We're all, even as a lab manager, you're still a lab tech as well. If you're the lab manager, you're still hands-on. It's not like you sit back and tell people what to do.
And do we have any teachers there as well?
No teachers.
All right, that's all good. That's good to know. Because when we talk about the short notice warning, then yeah, looking at it from two different perspectives, potentially. Cool. All right. So let's get started. I'm going to talk about the latest features and some of the upcoming features that we'd like to build and get your thoughts on it, and also tips and tricks to make it more efficient using RiskAssess. So first thing, hang on, I'll just switch over here. Oh yeah, so just in terms of, let me make myself a bit smaller. I seem to be too big. Here we go. Now I've shrunk down. So there's a few different versions of RiskAssess out there. So the usual one for science is used by about 86% of schools. So I'll just ask people to put their hands up if they're using the main version of RiskAssess for high school science.
That's a raise from everyone, I think. Oh,
everyone?
One person.
Well, pretty much.
Yeah, I think so.
That's good to know. And how many people using student RiskAssess? This is the ones where the students use RiskAssess hands-on, like with a different subscription, different login and password.
Martin and I are at the same school, so we should just say one for that one. So there's three hands up.
3 hands. All right, that's good.
And I think we're all 11 and 12s who had our hands up, are we? TAFE and 11, 12, so the senior.
Oh, okay. That's definitely good to know. And there is a version for primary schools, which I don't think any of you are probably using or here today. And there's also a version for food technology, which we just started last year. So this is for any subjects that involve cooking and food. So I might mention a little bit more about that one later. All right, so onto the new features. Let me go back here. So the first one, which you're probably the most aware of, is the short notice warning. So this one shows up in 2 different ways, and it's to address the thorny issue of getting enough notice for pracs and making sure that teachers are aware they need to talk to you if they're asking for something with too short notice. And it's set up to be customizable so that you can make it work the way you want to at your school. So when the teachers put in a lab booking on the risk assessment form, then they get the notice if it's less than the time you asked for, and you can change the message that you get as well. So the default one is short notice, please contact lab tech about preparation, but you can change this to something else. So I mean, if you're at a school where you really don't want any late pracs at all, I've seen one school has got short notice, can't have it as the message.
No.
Yeah, another one says short notice caramello koalas required. So yeah, just depending on your approach to this issue, you can set the message. So that shows up on the risk assessment form for the teachers. But then when you're looking at the scheduling screen, then you'll see that they get a warning next to them, and it says when it was booked in and short notice next to it. So that's the two main parts of it, and then there's the settings for it, so you can set it up to do what you want. So I'll just switch over to RiskAssess here. So I'll just show you it working. So you go, say you've got a prac here, and we'll just put it in period 1 today. So then you see the short notice warning comes up right away with the message. And then if we save this one, and then have a look on the lab schedule, you'll see it shows up with the warning. But if you want to change the message, then you can go into tools. In fact, this is what you need to turn it on as well. So you go to tools, and then you say warning on short notice bookings and cutoff time, and then you can set the booking warning. So you can set the number of days notice. Commonly, this is just a few, though occasionally schools have got like really long notice requirements. So we went up to the 14 days there. The newest thing is the cutoff time. So if you have a cutoff time at your school that's maybe 9 a.m. or 6 p.m. the day before, or 3 p.m. the day before, then you can do that as well, and just set the time there. It's in 24-hour time. And here's where you can set the message. So you can put it in caramello koalas or whatever else you want as the message, and that'll all show up. So when you're looking at the pracs that come through on the schedule, it's really, I mean, it doesn't stop people from booking in pracs with too short notice, but it gives you the option then to deal with it in the way that you want to. So, I mean, maybe if a lab tech, if someone talked to you about the prac and you're fine with it being short notice, then it would be all right to go ahead. But on the other hand, if something just came in unexpectedly with no sort of conversation around it or anything like that, maybe you deprioritize it or even not prepare it. It's really up to you and how you decide to run things with the rest of the department. So any questions on this one?
No, everyone seems to be quite happy with that.
That's good. No comments. All good.
I like it. It certainly makes teachers think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. No, we have a question.
Yep. I can't hear Mel, but if you relay, I'll
Yep,
answer.
no, I'm going to relay that on. So quite often teachers need the same equipment for several classes. And just hang on. Yeah. So you mean, sorry, James.
Oh, good.
Well, that's in that. Sorry, I think I can answer that one. That's in the scheduling part at the front. They need to enter in that they want it on that day, then that day, then that day. If that does that. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. James, are you able to bring up like your list on the side at the front that shows you all the pracs, like just on the very front page on the left-hand side, the pracs?
Oh yeah, sure. This one.
Yep. And so if you can you click on the see more button, please?
Yep.
Yeah, no, so yeah, okay. No, I think the question is like when someone's got a prac that goes for like they want the same prac, the same equipment for say 3 different days, it doesn't sort of, it still only shows up once in that particular list, but then if you go back and press the schedule, it shows you. Yeah.
Yeah, so for this one, this is maybe something I should talk about a little bit. So with the multiple scheduling, so in this one, like this room, period, and date, you really only want to be using that if it's the same class and they're doing something that stretches over multiple days.
Yes.
So say you're growing beans, seeds, or something like that, and then it's got multiple days when you're checking up on it and seeing how it's growing and that sort of stuff, then you want to use this. But if you're using, if you're doing a similar prac with a different class, then you want to use create modifiable copy. So say it's this one, then use create modifiable copy, because then you can take any other differences into account. So any differences in the lab setup, in the facilities, any differences in the class behavior, and any differences in allergies or anything like that. And also then you have the legal record that you've done a risk assessment for that particular class as well, and taken all these into account.
Yes. Yes. Can I ask, can you go back to the front page again, if that's okay?
Yep.
And then that the scheduling one, if you do a 4-week, that shows you that if, say, this solubility of salts, if that exact experiment was being done by the same class 3 times in a row, it will pop up 3 times in there in that scheduling section.
Yeah, so if we make this 13 period 2 and we make it on, what are we on? It's the 6th, so we'll make it on the 10th or something. And if you go ahead and update it, and then you go to the lab schedule, you'll see it showing up twice. So that's the same prac there. But this one,
sorry, I was just going to ask if that was helpful. Okay, I think it's more a teacher thing, like they need to sort themselves out, I think, is what the question was.
Oh, okay.
But that what you've just shown is helpful, so she'll be able to take that back and show the teachers. Yes.
That sounds good. You also see that like the first one's booked with short notice, but the next one doesn't have short notice, even though it's the same prac, because this one's further away. This is not till the 10th. All right, so I'll flick us back to the next thing. That was it. Everyone's.
Oh, sorry, I've got one more question.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that again, sorry, so someone was just saying the short notice thing gets disregarded. That is the teacher's issue.
So on this one, I think
no, that's really a teacher thing. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, with this one, I think, it comes down to what action you do take from it as well, and then people pay more attention to it. So if their pracs deprioritized or not prepared, then they'll pay more attention to the warning. But yeah, if you don't do anything as a result of it, then there's more, chance teachers might just ignore it.
Yes, it is one of those things. I think I'll just talk to everyone for a sec, James, where yes, we can only do what we can do. But if when you say no, okay, there is, I can't do this for you by this afternoon, then, then they will have to take notice of you then. But yeah, I think that's more, and if you have a head of department, it's something to discuss with your head of department. We've talked to our head of department, and she has basically told teachers they have to do that, or it's not going to happen for them. Sorry, I have a question. Yes. Yeah, our head of department does do that as well, but yeah, I mean, again, that's not really James's problem. That's a problem with staffing at the school, so he can't really do much about that. Okay, back to you, James.
All right. Yeah. So I mean, we can give you the tools so the teachers know they're doing it and they've done it. But then how it gets handled, the head of department, and what makes sense, how much you can push things there. At least everyone's clear that it's been done. I mean, with too short notice. All right. So I'll head on to the next one. Which is the disposal info. So we've had the disposal info maybe a year or so. Philip spent a lot of time over COVID actually writing disposal info for all the chemicals and solutions in the database. So you've probably seen it showing up. If we go back to, I know, acids and bases, you can see the disposal info here, like less than 2 liters a day can be poured down the drain. This sodium hydroxide, larger quantity should be placed in the waste container. And there's lots of info on the different types of waste containers and also how you can treat them as well, and then end up sending less to like a professional waste processor to save you money, and sort things out in school, and also sort things out even in the classroom as well, if things can be put down the drain rather than all combined up into a big container that's then hard to deal with later. So that's the disposal info. But also we've got labels for chemical waste containers for 25 different containers. So say, for example, let's have a look at copper waste. So these are all pre-prepared for you, ready to print out, and you can pop these on your containers. And we recommend having another label too, just a blank label where you write on what's gone into it too. These labels you can access through the links on the chemicals, but you can also see them if you go to print labels. So we've got standard labeling, custom labels, and then the chemical waste labels as well. So if you just click on that one, you go straight to the screen where you've got the choice of which waste containers that you want to print the labels for. Any questions on that?
Yes.
Yep.
It would just be a federal guideline. They wouldn't be Tasmanian one. Yeah, no, not specifically for Tasmania, I wouldn't imagine. Yeah.
So yeah,
he's just asking whether you have links to specifically Tasmanian legislation, you know, for the chemical waste labels.
Well, these ones, I mean, these are GHS
for the waste.
labels. So
sorry, the waste labels.
Yeah, they're GHS labels though as well. So they meet the requirements for the GHS. So they meet the requirement, the legal requirements.
Federal legal requirements. Is that what they are? That's what was the question.
Right. Yeah, I think the requirement is that they're labelled according to the GHS, and that all the labels in RiskAssess follow the GHS, so it should be following it.
Okay, hang on. Yeah, I think that it is our responsibility to know our state guidelines about what you can put down the sink, because they differ from each council even. And so my thing is I don't put stuff down the sink unless I know it's absolutely okay. Otherwise I'll reduce it down or evaporate, so back to the solid, or, you know, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got more info on that sort of stuff in some of the documents. So we've got the legal requirements and recommendations section here. So these are like ones which are, if you don't have any local guidelines that override it, then you can follow the RiskAssess ones. But I mean, a lot of the time it's very hard to get any guidelines from local area. So if you have them, then follow those. But otherwise, the RiskAssess ones are a good place to start. So we've got, yeah, if your school is subject to regulation, special regulations, you should follow these rather than the general ones from RiskAssess. But yeah, in New South Wales, at least, and most places, yeah, it's really hard to get anyone to tell you what you can and can't put down the drain.
I think that's okay. Is that okay? Yep. Back to you.
Cool. All right. So that's the new waste container labels. And oh yeah, so Philip also put a lot of work into the safety databases recently. So there's 650 or so new and updated items, especially saturated solutions, test papers and reaction products, and geological minerals and rocks. But a lot of them are little updates to things as well. So as the ESHA data changes on chemicals, there's some updates there. And other just little changes as time passes and people learn more about the chemicals and and classifications, and we get suggestions in. So if there's anything that you're missing as well, when you do a search and you can't find it, then yeah, please write in and we'll add it in the next update.
That's excellent. And I know there's been a couple of things that I've asked for that have appeared. So thank you.
That's good. That's good to hear. All right, so the items to be prepared by the lab tech. So this is the number of groups, and for this, we used to have this as part of the big text box below. I don't know if you can see my mouse, maybe you can, I think so. So we used to have it as part of the box, and then we pulled it out based on feedback from lots of lab techs that people tended to forget to update this, and when they made a copy, they just left the number of groups the same and didn't think about it. So to help with that, we pulled it out to a separate box. So people definitely have to see it, but as well as having to see it, you can make it mandatory as well if you want to. So this one, if you go into tools again, and you go down to the number of groups for preparations, you can actually make this required. So by default, it's optional, but if you want, you can make it required, and then no one can miss it. It really depends on the school though, because some schools, I mean, most schools I think use the number of groups, but there are a few schools that I talked to where they didn't really want number of groups. They had sets and other things that they always had the same number of groups, so they didn't need to say. So that's why it's a choice to opt in to make it mandatory if you want to with tools. And even if it's mandatory, so they have to put it in, if there's the odd prac where it doesn't make sense, like a demo, you can just choose demo here, or even not applicable, but they have to put something in the box if you turn that on in tools. Any questions about this one, Mel?
No, I think we're all good with that one. Oh, yeah, hang on. Oh, how about, can you hold on to that question, and at the end, you can come and ask James, put the headphones on and ask James if you like. Okay, that was an unrelated to this bit question.
Oh, okay, no worries. That sounds good. And oh yeah, so this is the best risk assessment system. So this is so you can say which risk assessments are really the ones that people should copy from. So as you use RiskAssess for a long time, or if you were at a big school, you can end up with a lot of different copies of the same risk assessment, and I mean very similar versions for different classes, right? And they might have slightly different items to be prepared, slightly different procedures, that sort of stuff. And you want to choose one which is the right one for people to copy, like the canonical one. And this also helps. So, I mean, people sometimes want to delete old risk assessments, which to like clear up so the so that the teachers only see the right one to copy from. But if you do that, then the old ones are hard to find. They're not easily around for the legal record. So instead of deleting things, instead just the very best ones. So it's sort of a different approach, but I think it fits better with the legal requirement to keep your old risk assessments around. And it also lets you very easily do this with just a button that's the best button on top. And then when you do this, when people search, you can make it so they always search the best school risk assessments if you've got enough of them made already for different pracs. So if we have a look, I'll just go back to the main homepage. So say this making hydrogen is the best one that you've seen. You may be doing a review of the pracs at the end of the year or something like that, or you might do it as you go along. You can just click the best button. Oops, yeah. And then when you go back to everywhere you see it, you'll see it's got a star next to it. And when you do a search of the best school risk assessments, then only the ones with the star will show up there. And once you have a best version for every risk assessment, you can, or a lot of the risk assessments, you can make the default search just the best. So you're going to customize searching here, and then you can make the default library here, which is the first thing in the search, the best school risk assessments. And if you do that, when you do a search, then you'll usually only see the best ones. And then if the teachers do ever want to see other ones, they can choose all, but they're just naturally copied from the best ones because they're the ones that you'd see. And for the best ones, you can do it as an annual review. You can make a copy of say this making hydrogen one is not quite right, but it's pretty good. You could use that as the basis. So you could make a modifiable copy, change it to make it better, and then star that one to make it your best one. So it really depends on each prac or how you want to go about doing it. But the option's there to handle it and then to give this best library for teachers to copy from. Any questions on this one?
Oh, the star button, it's actually, sorry, I can answer that one if you want, James. It's actually on the actual risk assessment. So when you open it up the top, there's a button, best.
Yep. The only thing is it does need to be fully signed off. So to make it a best one, it needs to be like a legal record signed off one rather than just one that can be changed.
Yep. Thank you. I think that was all.
That's all. Cool. So next one. Oh yeah. So let's briefly talk about the Australian curriculum. So it's been version 8 and now it's version 9, and I mean that's being adopted from 2023 in Tasmania. So in version 8, it was pretty clear that students should do risk assessments hands-on, and then this is even more explicit in the version 9. So yeah, the curriculum requires that students take an increasingly active role in considering safety and assessing risks in investigations as they progress from the 7 to 12. So you can see in 7 and 8, they've got recognising and managing risk, but by 11 and 12, they're actually meant to be conducting risk assessments themselves. So as the V8 curriculum came in, I think, we had quite a few schools that took out like a second subscription of RiskAssess that was just the same as the staff one, but for students to use hands-on so that the students didn't impact the staff system or potentially mess things up as well. So from that, we talked to the schools and we came to the conclusion that we should make a version of RiskAssess for students to use hands-on, which are set up properly for students to use rather than just piggybacking on the staff system. So we built this quite a few years ago now, and it's specially customized, and it's got tools for the staff to work with the large number of student pracs as well. So this is, I'll show you this more soon, but this is the multiple prac management screen. So it gives you a view of lots of student pracs at once, and you can sign off on them in one go, and you can see where they're up to and stuff. So I'll show you that more shortly. And just, yeah, this was in the words of a head teacher who wrote into us. So Student RiskAssess helps students design their experiments more independently and become more aware of what they're doing rather than relying on the teacher to explain and confirm things like risks and things to think about. So it gives the students a chance to learn quite a lot more. I'll just switch across to it now. Find the right version of RiskAssess that I've got up here. All right, so here's the student one here, and we're logged in as a staff user here. Oh, also Mel particularly asked me to talk about this one as she said she found it very helpful for the student-led investigations. And yeah, it's very popular for student design pracs, schools that do the IB, and student-led investigations, but you can also use it for teaching students about doing risk assessments with class pracs as well. Any comments at this point, Mel? And then I'll go into how it works.
Not yet.
All right, all good.
Over to you.
All right, so you're all familiar with RiskAssess, so I'll just show you kind of the differences. So if you go into, so this is like a student going into doing a risk assessment. So they need to enter their name. So it's set up for groups of students, and the students have to agree to conduct this experiment according to the school rules and teacher instructions. It's also got a PIN number so that students can protect their work from other students having a look at it and copying it if you're using it for assessment purposes. So they're the big changes in putting the risk assessment in. You can see it's got the same sort of things in terms of items to be prepared and the safety information and that sort of stuff. But then when you go to look at a risk assessment that's actually been generated, so let's have a look at this one here. The signature and certification sections are quite different. So, and there's an agreement by students that they're doing the right thing. but then the students actually do the risk assessment themselves. So they need to consider the risk, and then they do the assessment, and they can put in control measures or whatever else to bring the risk, the inherent level of risk, down to low, just like you would if you were the teacher there. And then the teacher needs to review and sign off on it. So the students don't actually sign off because they're under 18 years old, but they do the assessment, and then the teacher checks it and does the signing off. And for the lab tech, the world is still the same. They've got their own box. The student doesn't assess the preparation and cleanup done by the lab tech because that's not what they're doing. So that still stays as with staff risk assess. So that's the main look there. But then you come to the thorny problem, is that if you have lots of students doing pracs, it's quite different to staff risk assess because you have a huge number of pracs to deal with. If you have every student in a class, or even more, every student in a year and multiple years using it, you've got a huge number of pracs. So if you've only got a small number of pracs, you can use the lab scheduling like staff, but we added this new tool, the managed student pracs, and that was based on talking a lot with different lab techs who had run across this very problem and working out what to do with it. So if you go into manage student pracs here, say the teacher you're looking for Adrian Smith's class, so you go ahead and do a search, and then this is the screen that was on the slide. You can see a whole pile of pracs at once. It's about 15 per page. And for the pracs, you can see where they're up to with this green light system. So on this one over here, the students have done their risk assessment, but the teacher hasn't yet reviewed and signed off, and the lab tech hasn't reviewed and signed off. Whereas this one down here, no one's yet done the risk assessment or the sign off for it. Whereas this one, you can see it's got 3 green lights. The student, the teacher, and the tech has done their part. It's all turned into a immutable PDF copy, and it says fully signed over here. So on this page, you don't have to go into each risk assessment to see what's going on. You can see the procedure here and pop out the more and the less. You can see the title of it. You can see the items to be prepared, and you can also see the risk level in the classroom, the inherent level risk, and also the prep and cleanup risk, which is not assessed for that one, but for example, for this one, it's been assessed as low. Now, you can also give feedback. So for example, say you're reviewing the risk assessments and you see that this one down here, they're asking for 8 molar hydrochloric acid. So you can add a review note in as a staff member and say, for example, 8 molar is too strong. Suggest you use something more dilute. And then when the student goes in to look at the risk assessment, they'll see this message up the top. So 8 mol is too strong, use something more dilute. So then the student might go and do an update of it. So they go ahead and change their 8 molar to 2 molar hydrochloric acid, more in line what the other students were doing as well. Change it to hydrochloric acid, 2 molar, less than 3. We go and we update the risk assessment, and maybe then the student writes a note. So Adrian says, I've updated it, thanks. It's quite a polite student. There you go. Or maybe I've updated it to 2 molar, thanks. And then if you're back looking at the list of pracs, if you did a sort by the updated date, we'll see that this one now shows up at the top. So you can see I've updated 2 molar. So this is the staff member looking again. And you can see in the preparation, we've got 2 molar showing up here. But the communication with the student can be done through the review notes or the student group. So it's quite handy. I mean, you can also talk to them in class or whatever else, but sometimes this is quite popular with like the lab techs and lab managers because they don't necessarily see the students face to face as much. So through the review notes can work quite well. Now, you can also sort by the inherent level of risk. So if you want to see them ones which have been likely the most risky, then you can see them at the top here. And you can also look by the student names or the experiment name too. Now, The other thing is you can look by like the green light system as well to see where things are up to. So if you want to look for the not assessed by students ones, you can see that Dylan and Oscar need to get their act together. So they could be followed up to say, hey, you haven't done your prac yet. You need to get on it and do your risk assessment. And then you've got needs teacher signature. So these are the ones where the students have done their part on it, but the teacher hasn't yet reviewed and signed off. So this is kind of like the teacher's work list to go through to review them and maybe put feedback or sign them off. And then there's the lab tech one as well. So these are ones which don't have the green light next to the lab tech. And then there's a couple of other options, just not fully signed and fully signed. If you want to find ones which are all ready to go, then you could see the fully signed list. Now, also with this, you can sign off in bulk with the pracs. So say there's several, I mean, you could have a whole class of very similar pracs and half of them might be, if you're doing a class prac, might already be good to go. So say you're the teacher, let's find the similar pracs. So say these ones are all similar and they're all good to go. You can tick them and then go ahead and say sign these ones as the teacher. So for these ones, say the teacher's Adrian Smith, I think. So we'll go sign, and then you apply to the selected risk assessment. So it goes through and ticks it off. Oh, and this one, Dylan's couldn't be signed because they hadn't done their risk assessment yet. So the teacher shouldn't have ticked that one. But anyway, RiskAssess noticed that and didn't sign that. But for the other ones, they've all been signed off now. So if we look for you'll see that there's more fully signed ones showing up. Search. So you can sign off as the teacher, but you can also sign off as the, so you see the green light next to teacher now on all these ones. So teacher, teacher. So these ones didn't have the green light before, but now they do. And the icons changed as well to show the signature. So then after the teacher's done theirs, the lab tech might want to sign off on some too. So similar way, the lab tech ticks a few that they've reviewed and that are quite similar. So say these three, and you go sign selected as lab tech. And for the lab tech, you need to do the risk assessment for the prep and cleanup. Say it's medium risk and put on various things. I didn't look carefully what pracs they were, so we'll just choose some a bit at random, and then we'll sign off here as the lab tech, and then you apply that signature to all the risk assessments that you selected. You see it ticks them all off, and then when we go back and have a look at the list, we'll see that there's lots of fully signed ones here, and they got the green light for the tech showing up next to them all because they're signed off now. Also on this stuff, you can download it for Excel. So if you want to, for example, have a class list of stuff, so you know who's meant to get what, you can you can write out, I mean, you can format it as you want, copy out the preparations and the student names if that's what you wanted to do, and make a printout of just a simplified one, or you can print it out from this page as well. So it'll print here too. And if you wanted to sum up all of the items to be prepared, you could copy out the preparation column, say for a particular teacher and year group, and then put this together to work out like totals of solutions to prepare or something like that. Any questions on this?
Yes, there's two questions.
Sorry, Mel.
I'll go here first. And then, yep. Okay. Lisa was just asking, is there a way to disable the PIN number so it doesn't show for students? You know that if you log in as use the student name and then log in with your teacher version, you can still see everything without, like, the pins don't mean anything once you do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. But it's more about students forgetting their PIN number, I think, James, the question. But if you log in as with your adult version of RiskAssess password on the student one, the PIN numbers, the staff one, the PIN numbers don't matter then. You can still have access to all of their pracs. That's correct, isn't that?
That's exactly right. You answered the question for me. That's good. And also, if they do forget the PINs, then with the staff login, then you can always look up their PIN because you can go into it. So we're logged in as a staff at the moment. So if Olga or Fred forgot their one, you could go into Authors Update and you see their PIN and you can tell them what is. Or you
excellent. I didn't know that one.
You can even change it.
That's great. Sorry.
And if you want to.
Sorry, and I've got another question for you. Sorry,
sure.
James, I keep talking over you. Okay, so this is a question specifically for year 11 and 12 and above. If a student has turned 18, do they then have to sign the RiskAssess themselves if they're over 18?
Right. No, they don't have to, because the teacher's really the one that's taking the responsibility for it. So the students do the assessment, but then the teacher is the one that checks it and they're the ones that really take the responsibility in the end for it.
Yeah. Okay, that's happy. I have another question. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So sorry, James, the question is, if it's not an individual prac, if the class is all doing exactly the same prac and the teacher wants them to do the student RiskAssess, like, is it just going to end up being a whole heap of ones that are the same?
So it would be, but the point in that case is that the students learn to do it themselves. So
yes.
Yeah, you wouldn't use, that's why we've got the managed student pracs rather than the lab scheduling. The lab scheduling is still there, and if you've just got a few people doing like their own student design pracs, it might be the way to go. But if you're doing a whole class and you've got lots of similar pracs, then you'd go into the managed student pracs, and that way you get them all in a list and you can sign off on them in bulk and review them in bulk. So if you're checking whether students have learned how to do a good risk assessment, you can scroll through very quickly and mark them off as good or signed off or whatever else in one go. So the multiple prac management is really the tool to deal with lots of risk assessments. And we don't have that in staff risk assess because it's not how you usually do it. You wouldn't have like 30 or 100 of the very similar pracs.
Yes. Was that helpful? That's good. Thank you. Back to you, James. Cool. I think, unless there was another question. No, back to you.
All right. So let's see where we're up to. Oh yeah, so RiskAssess for food tech. So this one, rather than having like all the information on chemicals and lab equipment, it's got 1,000 items of food that you can choose in your risk assessment, and it's got kitchen equipment. So all the stuff that you'd find in your kitchen or a commercial kitchen. So any subjects like hospitality or home economics or food technology, food studies, whatever you have at your school that does like have that sort of hands-on cooking, this is quite a useful system. It's got a lot on allergies as well, which is one of the bigger risks in cooking related food things. So if you're interested, feel free to send me an email and I can set you up a trial to have a look at it and see what you think.
Right.
So anyone
I have a question.
Comments? Yeah.
I have a question, yes.
Yep.
No, because it's only got food entered into it, not chemicals.
Yeah, you wouldn't get the usual RiskAssess stuff.
No, because the normal risk assess is chemical database, and the food one is for food. So you could, some food things are in the normal risk assess because we use them as part of our experiments, but it's not set up the same as the food tech one. Does that make sense? Yeah, so the chemical one's specifically for chemicals, and the pracs that we do, where the risk assess for food is set up for hospitality. So it's a bit different. Is that correct, James?
Your perfect answer, thank you, Mel. Yeah, I don't need to answer these questions. You know them all. It's good. I suppose the only other comment is like the labeling is a bit different in food tech. So it's you don't have JHS labels. It's all just sort of a simplified label system for putting labels on food containers in your pantry.
Can you show us a label for one of the food ones, if possible, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
You go to, let's see, for the food risk assessment food tech. So I think I've got a sample one here. So you see here, this is like plain flour. So you got allergies on there rather than like JHS pictograms and that sort of stuff. I think we've got one pictogram that you can put in, which is the flammable one, which was for hand sanitizer. But generally, you got very few pictograms and more allergies to think about.
That's excellent. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? I think that's all.
All right. So what have we got? Oh yeah, future ideas. So we did these very quickly because we're getting towards the end of time, and I want to show you some tips and tricks as well, or some other ones if I get a chance. So this one, we're thinking to add a chemical register into RiskAssess. So this is what you're seeing on the screen is just like a made up one in Excel. It's not a really programmed one. But it's got the chemical name, the concentration, it's got the container quantity, which you need for the actual manifest for legal reasons, and then you've got the actual quantity, which is more for your stock taking purpose. You've got the manufacturer, some product codes, date of purchase. It's linked to the risk assess information, if possible. So if you've got sodium hydroxide, you'd link it to the right entry in RiskAssess on that concentration of sodium hydroxide, the DG and packing group, and then for the SDSs, we wouldn't be storing them in RiskAssess, but you'd be able to put a link to the manufacturer's website or potentially to ChemWatch. I need to check whether we can do that, and you put in the expiry date. So if you click the link, you'd be able to go straight to the SDS, but you wouldn't upload them to RiskAssess. It would be stored on the manufacturer's website or wherever you found it from still. And you've got a notes column. So Mel, just if anyone can raise their hand if they'd be interested in using a chemical register inside of RiskAssess.
Yeah, that's pretty much everyone. There's actually nearly 30 people here now.
Oh,
a few people came in after, so that was nearly a full hand raise. Yes, no.
Oh, that's really good.
Question.
Because
we just got a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so quite a lot of us have very similar databases that we've done ourselves on a spreadsheet, similar to that. So the question is, if we've already got one of our own that's very, very similar, can we import it into RiskAssess?
Yes, so I'd write some way for you to import it in. Yeah, you definitely not.
That was a big smile.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to type it all again. That would be not fun at all. Yeah, so definitely an import from Excel style thing. You'd probably like save your Excel as a CSV and then import it in.
Okay, great. I have another question.
Yep.
Okay, so the question was, with your spreadsheet in RiskAssess, can we add things into it, or is it just as you present it to us? Like storage location, because that's, yeah.
Oh, right. You mean there's a column that you would like to have that isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So our, we have a
Yes.
shelf storage number where everything lives, and it would be very helpful to have that as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think you wouldn't be able to customize it, but please send me an email and we can talk about it. So to that team at RiskAssess, and then I can just add it in. And when we build it, we'll put the shelf storage in. So we do have like the chemical store. So you could have multiple of these, like the chemical store and other places, chemical store in this building, chemical store in a different building, or whatever else, or things that weren't even in the chemical stores, as different options. But yeah, we don't have here like a shelf number or anything. So yeah, maybe how many people in the room would want like a shelf number or some sort of storage location in the store?
Yeah, basically everyone. Basically
Okay,
everyone put
that's
their hand
good
up.
to know then. What would you call it?
Location.
Just location, yeah, that sounds good. Location.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
And yeah,
I have another.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, there's another question.
Yeah.
Okay, so the gentleman speaking sort of said that he has a suggestion for you to look at, I think, another program called Quartzy.
Yeah.
Quartzy, I don't know if you've seen that, and that has a lot of basically all the other bits that we said, can you add in? It might have those already in there. If you, he was sort of saying if you could replicate that, that'd be great. But I'm pretty sure you can't replicate somebody else's program.
You can have a look what columns are there, but yeah, if there's stuff that that people want to see that isn't there, then please write to me. It's hard to do over the Zoom, and we're running out of time as well. But please write to me, and
Yes.
we can either talk via email or set up like a time talk on the phone or video call or whatever else. And yeah, if there's anything you want to see there, we can make sure that it's added in.
Sorry, there might be one more question.
Yeah.
Okay, Patricia's going to email you, and Zach, no, you changed his mind. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
no,
please,
I thought from the beginning you had a question from before that we were going to leave to the end.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. Just while we're talking about,
He might have to email you.
yeah. All right. Just on the inventory, this one's like an equipment inventory. So probably maybe the next thing after the chemical one, or maybe at the same time, we'd bring out like an equipment inventory. So this one does have more location info. So this is like building for storeroom 2, and then it's got a location like left shelves or A3 drawer or whatever else. So it's a bit like the chemical one. It's got less columns in it because there's less info on each one. We've also got like a link to the RiskAssess information on it. You don't have SDS or anything like that, but you could potentially have a column here to see the pracs where it was used, just to give you an idea of when it's been used and how it's been used. So any comments on this one? Again, it's just an Excel thing that I made up. It's not built into RiskAssess yet. So if there's things that you want to see there that aren't there, then yeah, please tell me now, or write to me as well.
Okay. Oh, yep, I have a question.
Yep.
Okay. A suggestion for this particular one to add in a link to an SOP.
Oh, we do have that actually.
Oh.
Just
it is there. It's all right.
That's good. That's
all right,
that's an easy one.
Okay, and the question from before that we were leaving to the end
Yeah.
wasn't really a question, a suggestion.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an easy thing to do or not, to perhaps put the molecular weight on the labels, chemical
Oh, okay.
labels.
Make your weight on the labels. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they are
Molar mass. Sorry, yeah,
tight,
molar
but
mass.
we were thinking that we could squeeze it in potentially down in the bottom where it says SDS available. The guidelines on the label do say you shouldn't have other random stuff on it. I mean, not random stuff, but stuff other than the required info. But I think if we put it in the bottom, like with the SDS available, it could be workable. And, the fact you had a little bit of extra info, I don't think would make your labels bad or anything like that. So I
said the wrong words. Sorry, it was molar mass, not molecular weight. Sorry, molar mass.
Molar mass. We do have a lot of this information in the RiskAssess databases behind the scenes, but not for every chemical. So Philip would go through and add this information. I think we were talking like the molecular weight and the atomic weight, but I'll talk about molar mass with Philip as well.
Okay.
It would potentially show up in the bottom line. It's a bit of a job to put in this info for the rest of the chemicals where it's not there, and then squeeze it in the labels. The labels are really tricky to change because you have to squeeze so much in just a little label and deal with all the different chemicals. But I think it should be doable in future updates.
I just had one last question. Is it a quick question? Because we have to finish. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Teacher and lab tech have to sign the student risk assessment. No. It's if the student is done in a student risk assess, you just sign it off on that. Yep. Okay. Sorry. Back to you, Philip. Sorry, James. Oh.
That's all right. All good. So I think we're almost out of time, but I did want to show you a few quick things. So under tools, there's all sorts of things you might be interested in. There's contact details, billing. For changing passwords, we recommend you do this whenever staff leave, so that if you change the password, then the staff who's left wouldn't have access anymore. You can customize the year group list, which is the bit that shows up when you do a risk assessment on everyone. That's the list, so you can change it to add any items any subjects that you have at your school, and you can delete stuff you don't to make the list shorter, to make it easier to choose. And if you've got a really big school, you can even put in like 7A, 7B, 7C, or 7 teachers' initials or whatever you want for the individual classes if you ever need to do that. Most of the time, like the teacher and the year group's enough, but there are occasionally schools where you do need that level of detail. We've talked about short notice, number of groups. The customized searching, we talked about choosing the best ones, but you can also choose this as any date. So usually when you do a search, you only see the last 18 months because schools generally have like a cycle where the pracs come back again within the 18 months if they're going to. But if you've got like a 2-year cycle or something like that, then the any date can be a good option here for the search, but then you'll see more pracs coming up when you do a search. Sorry, back to tools. The other thing here is backups. So you can download backups, and in fact, you should do it every year at least, or you do it, in fact, every term. So you should be keeping the risk assessments for the lifetime of the people involved, which is an awfully long time, because the statute of limitation, although it's 7 years, it's from when the problem comes to light. So if, for example, some chemicals found to cause cancer in 20 years' time, then you could need the risk assessment up to 27 years later. So risk assess, we're hoping to be around for a very long time, but just in case, you should download your backups every year and store it in the school system just in case. So you put on a shared drive or wherever your IT folks say is a good place to store things for the long term. And the other fun thing here is the stock taking and usage. So for this one, you can download the chemicals used. And it opens up in Excel for you. I'll just make it a bit bigger because you probably can't see much there. So with the chemicals used, this shows you which chemicals have been used in the last 3 years, and it tells you when it was last used and also how many times it was used. So if you're going through your storeroom and you're wondering what's needed and what's not needed, then this is really handy. And there's also the chemicals produced, which might be useful for your disposal. And there's biologicals and food and equipment to know when they were used as well last. Any questions on this?
No, we don't have any questions on this one.
Oh, okay, that's good. And how much time have I got? Can I keep talking, or are we at the end of the time?
We're actually a little tiny bit over. Yep. So we may have to say thank you very much. Like, are there any last questions for James?